What are your memories of your formative days in Alaska? How long did you spend
I was there until I was 2, so I really remember very little.
Mm-hmm.
What I remember is from pictures. Because I was born in Juneau, we lived in Chichagof. My mother had to go to the hospital to have me, and I was like 6 weeks old when I took my first plane ride. And I was also 6 weeks old when I took my first boat ride. And they used to put me up under the bow of my dad's boat and go out fishing or whatever they did.
Uh-huh.
And I've always been very comfortable in boats and airplanes.
Yeah. Well, as a result. Okay.
Which is an interesting, I don't know if it has anything to do with that or not, but I kind of would like to think that it does. I think one of the interesting stories about Alaska was when, after my mother came back down to the lower 48 and put my sisters on the train to Denver to stay with my grandmother, she and I went back up to Alaska to be with my dad. And they expected the Japanese to invade at any time. My dad gave my mother a handgun and said, if the Japanese come, shoot the baby first and then kill yourself. Don't be taken prisoner.
Brutal.
I thought, yeah. Well, if the Japs had invaded, I wouldn't be here. And you wouldn't be here either.
Wow. So that was why you were up in Alaska, the family was up there in the first place? Was your father?
No, my father was a metallurgical engineer, and they were taking the gold out of the tailings that had been mined during the gold rush, because the price of gold was so much greater in the 40s than it had been back in the 1800s. And then war was declared when we were there.
Wow.
6 months after I was born. Yeah.
That had to be tough for your parents. I mean,
yeah, it was, and they
being in a very vulnerable spot like that, you know.
Right, and 3 little girls, and we're out on this island, and it was very primitive. Yeah, my parents were real adventurers. They did a lot of very unusual things in their lifetimes that nobody else I knew was doing, or whose parents were doing that. But to us, it was just normal. That's just how it was.
So what are some of those things that
well,
they would do?
that my father, that my mother followed him around for one thing, and he had 14 jobs or 15 jobs in his lifetime. I mean, that's
states?
a lot. Yeah, all different places, and he worked in silver mines and aluminum smelters and copper smelters and gold mines, and my mother trekked after him, and he'd get a job and he'd finish the job and they'd go on to a new job, and of course it was right after the Depression, so maybe that had something to do with it, but he never stayed very long in any job. I mean, he was and he always moved up and bettered himself. He was a very smart man.
What was his trade?
He was a metallurgical engineer.
Okay.
And his specialty was non-ferrous metals. So that would be gold, copper, aluminum, and silver. So he traveled all over the world doing those things. I remember when I was in grade school, he went to Brazil for like 5 months.
Yeah.
And brought us, and that was a time when people weren't flying over the ocean, just back and forth all the time. And he brought back pictures of Rio de Janeiro and came and talked to my class and told all about his adventures. It was really neat. He was... So
it was really not a very explored place, or very,
Right. It was very
unexplored. It wasn't done back then.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. He spent a lot of time in the wilds.
So where did you go after Alaska?
After Alaska, we went to Denver, where my grandparents lived. My Watson grandparents lived, and we were there for a little while, then went to Washington, D.C., where my father was. This was all during the war. He was in the Coast Guard, but we're not really sure what he did. And my sister thinks that maybe he was in the Secret Service. Now, we have no idea if that is,
Yeah.
if there's any truth in that, but we've never been able to find out what he did. And Grampy and I have tried to, track him down through his Coast Guard records. Anyway,
Yeah.
we don't know what he did except that he was in Washington, D.C., and he worked in the Pentagon.
Oh, he
and,
did?
Mhm,
Oh, wow.
and he, and when I was little, we were there from the time I was 2.5, maybe, till I was almost 4. There were a lot of people in uniform in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And I would run up to every soldier or sailor and say, "Daddy, Daddy." Mother said it was a little dangerous taking me any place because I would go off with some strange men. No, I wouldn't really go off with them, but I was very friendly.
So Denver was like a year or two, and then D.C.
No, Denver was like a
Just
month.
a month? Oh, really? Okay.
Then we went to Washington, D.C. Then we went to Boston after the war was over and stayed with my grandparents, Russell, in Hyde Park. And we were there. My sisters went to school, and I started, no, I didn't start kindergarten. No, I was in preschool. But I had the chicken pox while I was there, and that's what I remember.
I see.
And I
Okay.
also remember going with my grandmother to a friend of hers who was a shut-in, and we had tea. And my grandmother was a very proper lady, and I have many wonderful memories of my grandmother, Ibel, or Isabel, for whom your sister's named.
Okay.
And we spent that time in Boston, and then we bought a house in Old Greenwich, Connecticut. And I had my 4th birthday in Connecticut in April.
So all these different places within, 2 years, you're saying Denver, D.C., Boston, and now Greenwich?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Uh-huh. And we were there until I was 10, when we moved to Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And we were in northern Rhodesia, and I went to boarding school in southern Rhodesia.
Now, why Africa?
The Copper Belt. My dad was hired by a British company
Okay.
to build a smelter, to design a smelter, which is still working.
Is it really?
It really is.
Wow.
And I have a copper bracelet made from the copper that came from that was given to me like 5 years ago. Which is another extraordinary story.
Right.
Just, anyway. It's northern Rhodesia, it's now Zambia, and it's just above South Africa. So it's way in the southern part of Africa. It was it was a wonderful experience. A very formative experience. I was sent to boarding school by myself when I was 10. My parents put me on a plane. And I really never knew why I was going to boarding school. And in my child's mind, I assumed that it was because I had done something naughty. And when I was sad, and I would write them a letter and say, "Please let me come home. I will be good. I promise I'll be nice to John." And they did send me, because the local school was of very iffy standards.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
In Greenwich?
No, in Africa.
Oh, okay.
So they felt that I needed to go to boarding school to keep up my education, so when we went back to the States, I wouldn't be behind.
So you were in Zimbabwe living, and then you were sent to boarding school
In Zambia.
In Zambia. Okay.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah, it was a British private school.
Mm-hmm.
And also it was very typical of people to send their children away. All the English do, or did at that time.
I know, my cousins on my dad's side are all boarding school kids.
Yeah. So it was just the way things were done, very different.
Interesting. And in those years of boarding school, I mean, it had to be tough to be, away from home and think that you were being punished all the time. But did
Well, I kind of got over that because I would spend 3 months at school and then 1 month at home. 3 months at school, 1 month at home. So I really lived at boarding school
Right.
and visited home.
Mm-hmm.
One of the great things about boarding school was that I was able to ride. I had a passion for horses,
Uh-huh.
and I could ride. I rode 3 times a week, which was just heavenly. Lessons were Saturday morning, pony club was Sunday afternoon, and jumping classes were on Wednesday.
Wow.
So I learned how to play tennis, I learned how to play field hockey, I learned how to dive, I learned how to do field and track, because everybody in school had to participate
Right.
in all the things. So
Be active.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so it was a good experience in that.
Yeah, when did you find time to go to school, Mary Lee?
It was very disciplined, believe me. You got up at 6 a.m. and you made your bed and you cleaned up your room and you had breakfast at 6:30 and you started classes at 7:30 and you better have had your homework done. And you went nonstop until 1. And then you had lunch. And then you had a rest time because it's hot in the middle of the afternoon.
I see.
And then we had sports. And then we had study time, and then we had dinner, and then we had more study time, and then we went to bed. Lights out at 9 o'clock.
Wow. So
I really resist being organized now.
Well, I think that's so funny because it's very reflective of how clean your home is these days. I mean, just the way you...
A part of that is my training. A large part of that, though, is your grandfather's influence, I have to admit. This is how he really likes things. I can live in much more chaos and messiness than he can.
I see. Okay.
In fact, when he leaves and he's gone like for a couple of days, I realize how messy I really am.
You just have all your crafts and
Yeah,
things
and
out.
I leave things out, and you kind of have a trail of things going.
Right. Yeah, I knew before I went to bed last night. I was like, I better put away, all my computer and.
Oh, you're so
stuff
good.
like that. Oh yeah. I mean, I knew it wouldn't be good to find that stuff in the morning. I mean,
right.
That's no good.
Mess.
Africa. How long did you spend there?
From the time I was 10 until I was 14.
Until you were 14.
So we moved back. My father had always planned to come back, and we came back in 4 years. I was very socially backward because I'd been at a girls' school, and all I was interested in was horses. Truly.
As a 14-year-old should be.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And my father said, and then you discovered boys. And so I went from horses to boys. But I've always loved horses, and riding was a great joy to me.
How long did you ride for? Did you ride once you came back to America?
I did. There was a place, a home that had a barn and boarded horses. I walked through 2 backyards to get to. Okay. And I was the groom for one of the horses. And I did that for 2 summers.
Ah, okay. Well, and so now Addie is a horseback rider.
Yes.
I mean, have you seen her ride?
Oh my goodness, she is awesome.
Yeah.
She has the most beautiful posture, and she is just, it is such a joy to see her ride. Mm-hmm. She's really good.
She's really good. She's the new master of the equine, And then you discovered boys once you came back to America, and obviously...
How did that work out? Huh?
Well, yeah, I mean, this was the time of high school, right? 14
right.
to 18, 15 to 18.
I was going into 9th grade.
This is back in Greenwich.
In Old Greenwich, yeah.
Okay.
And I actually went away to boarding school for my 9th grade year to Long Island, to a school called Cathedral School of St. Mary's, where my aunt Mary Russell was the principal, and they felt that I had a better than average education at Chesapeake in Africa so that I should continue in private school. Well, it turned out very differently than my parents and my aunt thought it would.
Oh, in Long Island.
And but then I came back my sophomore year and went to Greenwich High School, the public school. We graduated from Greenwich High School. I was a dancer. I taught dancing and was very active in a group of people that went and danced different places. And then we had a show in the spring. So dancing became my great love. I kind of gave up horses and dancing and boys and
What
social
specific
life.
kind of dancing was it? Was it just...
Well, I taught ballroom dancing, and then I did a lot of the kind of dancing that they do on Broadway.
So.
And I do a little bit of tap, and I did a little bit of ballet, and, and a little bit of modern.
I think I've seen it, yeah. Up at the cabin. That's right.
And then when I grew up, I taught aerobics for 12 years.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so there's
so it came
my
out.
mother, you know, she
Yeah.
did aerobics too.
Yep.
Okay. How was your relationship with your siblings, you know, during this time? I mean, what?
A good question.
Yeah.
My oldest sister, Sue, had been left in America to go to college. So she never went to Africa with us. She got married when she was in college and had a little boy, and then came out and stayed with us while her husband was in Korea, and then we all came back together. My second sister got married right before we left for Africa to a man there. And so John and I were left at home. I had been at boarding school for a total of 4 years, and at the time, you know, when I was 14 and he was 11, I mean, I really didn't have much to do with him. He'd been my baby when I was younger. I adored him. But then, you know, we got to be older, and we really had nothing. I mean, we never fought, but we really didn't have anything much in common either. It's interesting. I feel in a lot of ways that I left home at 10. That my relationships with my family were much more distant than they would have been if we had all been home at the same time. So it's interesting when.
Does that bug you?
No, it's just how it is.
Yeah.
You know, it's just how it is.
Yeah, sure.
What's interesting is when the four of us get together, we go right back into the roles of oldest sister, third sister, brother who doesn't want to be bossed around by anybody.
Right.
I mean, it's really funny, and here we're old. But
it's funny how siblings will bring you back to that kind of, you know,
Yes.
you're always young, you know,
Yes.
while you're kind of with your siblings. And,
yes,
you know, because they'll always be your siblings. That's always something
That's
my mother
right.
said to me.
that's right.
You
They
better
will.
love your brother, because he'll always be your darn brother.
Right. Right.
So, and your parents as well. I mean, you said that, you know, you thought you were being punished while you were away in Zambia doing boarding school. Was it a you know, for the best kind of relationship, or was it a you know? I mean, obviously you love your parents very much, but
I do. That's a good question, because I really don't think we ever talked about it.
yeah.
I know we never talked about it, so I really never got their perspective, and it's really only as an adult, as a parent, as a grandparent, that I come to look at what they did and what their reasons might have been as being what they believed would be the best for me. And I think the bad part about it was that they didn't explain something to me. You know, but at that time, you did what your parents said.
Yeah.
You know.
Lord knows you're right.
Yeah. So, and later I think about all the good things that have come of it. I think because I was a lonesome, I was the only American at the school.
Oh.
So I was really, when I first got there with my American accent, they gathered around me in a group and said, "Talk, Yank, talk, Yank." And I was just, what am I going to say? And I picked up an accent, a Rhodesian accent, so quickly you can't even believe it.
So is this like a modern South African accent, like a kind of
Afrikaner
kind of,
Yeah,
cadence?
it's kind of English, kind of South African,
Yeah.
kind of, just a more English sounding, I think,
Okay.
than anything. But my parents were appalled, I think, when I came out sounding like a Britisher.
I think it's so funny. Talk, Yank, talk, Yank.
Talking, yeah. It was really kind of frightening, though, for a 10-year-old.
Uh-huh. I mean,
A group of kids. Anyway, because of that experience, I am, I think, aware of people that are, that feel out of it or lonely, and my heart goes out to them, and I tend to, gather them in.
yeah.
Just, I don't want people to have to feel that way.
Sure.
And it's real easy not to, with smile and, "Hi, how are you?" and "Who are you?" and
Right.
yeah, just draw them in anyway. So I think that's a character building thing that happened.
Yeah, early sympathy development, I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
it's a good thing
compassion.
for a 10-year-old to be,
Yeah.
have compassion.
Yeah.
Oh.
So. And then I went to the University of Wisconsin,
Mm-hmm.
and I met your grandfather. My fourth week I was there after I'd pledged Alpha Chi Omega.
AKO.
AKO.
Third, fourth week you were at Wisconsin.
Yes.
You met Grampy, and so set the scene for us. So tell me, that evening before you were going out, were you in your dorm room with your ladies, doing your makeup, talking about all the boys who were going to be at
And
this
deciding,
party tonight?
deciding what to wear. And at Wisconsin, we had things called beer suppers,
Uh-huh.
which were the way that fraternities and sororities would get together so that you would meet the other people.
Mm-hmm.
And the girls would bring the food, and we'd go to the boys' fraternity house, and they'd provide the beer and soda.
Naturally.
And I think I got ready at the sorority house. As a freshman, I was very nervous. These parties were just, it's like being, oh my gosh, being on parade and the guys, it's so bad.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even imagine what it must have been like just in that age of fraternities and sororities. I feel like that was just kind of like the golden time of those, when everything was very, regimented and proper. And,
Right.
There was a lot of tradition still with it. It wasn't so much the wild, stuff that you see today.
Though there probably was.
Well, I mean, I'm sure, it probably devolved, but like, in the beginning, it at least started from a,
from a nice,
from a good perspective or standpoint,
Right.
I mean,
right. And this was a very proper party in a sense that, our house mother was there, and we were. I was down in the basement of the ATO house, and we had dinner, and we were downstairs, and the band was playing, and some people were dancing, and we're kind of all waiting to be asked to dance. And I was talking to two of my sorority sisters, and your grandfather came down into the basement from gymnastics practice.
That's right, he was a gymnast.
He was. And he saw us standing, and I remember we were kind of in the middle of the room, and the stairs were over there, and the light was kind of behind him, and he came downstairs, and one of the girls that I was talking to said, "Oh, there's Joel Jennings." I said, "Oh, okay." Well, he came over to us.
What? Was he in his gymnastics outfit?
No, he cleaned up.
Okay.
He cleaned up.
Good.
And he was cute. and he asked me to dance. And because I'm from the East Coast and he's from the East Coast, we both danced in the same way. We didn't dance like Wisconsin kids, we danced like East Coast. So we had a lot of fun dancing.
So what was that dance?
Oh, jitterbug.
The jitterbug. Okay,
Yeah.
so the East was the jitterbug. And what about the Midwest and the West?
Well, they would probably call it the Lindy. We would have done the foxtrot, the samba, the rumba, the Lindy, jitterbug.
Jitterbug. Okay, and did you guys dance for a while that evening?
We did. We danced for a lot. And then he asked me if I wanted a beer, and I didn't want a beer because I don't drink beer. And so I had a Coke and he had a beer. And then he said, well, do you play any musical instruments? And I said, well, yes, actually I do. I play the drums. Thinking he was never know whether I play the drums or not. He said, really? Up in our chapter room, there's a set of drums. Come on up. We'll. So I went up and I sat down and I could do da 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 or da 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 da.
You weren't really wrong, you know. You could play the drums.
Well, right, right. And he said, okay, all right. Do you play an instrument? And I said, well, yeah, I do. I play. I play the piano. He said, oh, look, there's the piano. I could play chopsticks. He said, okay, all right, now enough fooling. Can you play? And I thought, what instrument would he never be able to test me on? I said, well, yes, I play the trumpet. Well, he is a jazz trumpeter. So he goes into his bedroom, brings back his trumpet, and I, of course, could go, nothing. And I have to tell you, this was a time in my life that I was very insecure. I'd just gone through Rush, and one of the ways that I dealt with Rush was to make up stories to the people I was talking to, because you talk to 1,000 people.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's a crazy system. Anyway, so I was making up stories, so I would just continue to make up stories.
You should have told him you played the organ or the harp or something like that, you know?
If only you'd been there. So that was how we first met, and that was memorable, I guess. And then he walked me back to the sorority house. And
Did he give you a smooch on the hand?
no, he tried to kiss me, and I pushed him away, and I said, I do not kiss boys on my first date. And anyway, this isn't a date. And that was the start of it all. This is fun.
I love this. This is so
This
great.
is so great.